Boston Duane Junior. This is like a Fender Champ Clone. These retail for about $339, and this amp is supposed to have orange drop capacitors, and it's supposed to be hand wired. I don't know whether that's the case. So this belongs to Lee at the shop, and he simply wants a jack socket fitted in this so he can use it on a cab. But I thought, well, we've got his hands on it, we'll have a little look at it inside and see if what they say about these is true, and that these are quite a useful item. So let's swing it round and have a look. So we've got usual Fender Champ layout there, and we've got inside, you can see we've got a Celestion speaker there. We've also got a rectifier tube, and I can't remember what that tube is now, but we'll have a look at that when we get the back off it. Obviously we've got the 12x7, we've got 6v6 here. Looks solid enough. It has got an IEC in there, so we'll just remove that and we'll take the back off it. We have to take these screws out and it all falls and smashes the tubes, but we've got those two up there, so that's not going to happen. So we'll take these out. Let's get this off if we can. Oh my word, by gone, that's tight. Why is that then? We'll also have a look at this as well and see what the cabinet's made of, because I can't quite see from here. There we go. My word, that was stuck on well. Well, that is chipboard, particle board, whatever. Let's have a look at the let's try and look in there. You know, I think that might be plywood, you know. Right, well, let's have a look inside. That's so we have, this amp is indeed hand wired. It's not a turret board, but it's one of those tag boards. That's okay, and we do indeed have a couple of orange drops in there. There's one thing I see though. So check out, I wonder if we can zoom in a bit so we can see a bit more. So check this out here. That is the cathode bypass capacitor, and underneath is the cathode resistor. That's for the bias. So they have a tendency to get quite hot, so quite why they've sat that capacitor on top of there, I don't know. That's not good at all. So that's the first bad thing I've really noticed about this amp. Not so much even a bad thing, it's just kind of that really needs something doing with that. Having said that, it's not damaged or anything, but it's not good practice to do that. What else? So just looking at what components we've got in here now. So let's just have a look at the smoothing on there. 22, 22, and I presume that's going to be 22, but again they've faced them the wrong way around, so we can't really see, which is a bit naughty, but never mind. So I think we've probably got 322s in there. What else? Drop-in resistors are metal oxide, so that's good. Half watt resistors on the board, well, they work fine, but they're not for me. But now I have just spotted something else. I've just had to turn that other light off because the aluminium chassis is making the camera flicker. But look at this. Mr. Laycross has been, so this amp has been built by Mr. Laycross, and look at that, that is unbelievable. I've just peeled that off like it's stuck on with sticky tape. That is not good, is it? And I have to tell you, I've plugged this amp in and it sounds great, but that, I'm afraid, is not good. What is that? That's actually the speaker connection, that is, on there. I think that was. Let's just have a look where that goes. Yeah, it is. That's the ground on the speaker there, on there. So that's not good, is it? So that's that. I mean, that's not just been laid across. That's, they might as well have stuck that on with sellotape. How dreadful! What a shame. So I think one of the things we're going to have to do on this amplifier, we're going to have to go round and check all the connections and see if Mr. Laycross has been anywhere else, because he's certainly been there, and that's definitely Mr. Laycross's Friday afternoon work. Some of this soldering leaves a lot to be desired. I can hear Gooden already shouting at the screen, and I bet he spotted a few things that I haven't, as he usually does. So Gooden's one of the subscribers to the channel, and he keeps me on my toes. Now, yes, what we got here? Ground. So yes, so it all looks there. I mean, we've not seen the transformers yet, what size they are or anything, but I can tell you this amp sounds superb. It really does. But that's a bit worrying when you see that sort of thing. And we've just seen that come off of there, like so, and that is not good. It's not. So that's obviously on the secondary there, and that's obviously the other secondary there, that blue one where that came off. Yes, secondary of the output transformer, that is. So we've spotted a couple of things on this amplifier. Cathode bypass capacitor above the cathode resistor, which is a no-no because they get quite hot. And obviously if this tube begins to draw excessive current for any reason, due to fault or whatever, that'll get even hotter and burn that capacitor. And also that amount of heat going through it will also ruin it. Even if it doesn't burn it, it'll just eventually destroy it internally. Well, I'm guessing. Tell me different in the comments. What else? So we've got some soldering here. That one there, look, doesn't look fabulous, does it? So it's just a matter of going over with the iron on this, really. Don't see anything else much that's... And the caps are drained, by the way, if anybody's wondering. Couple of drop-in resistors here. We look okay. So yeah, so just a bit of tardy soldering here and there. Let's have a look at the mains, shall we? The ground down there. Yeah, that's okay. It just needs a good coat of looking at. So I think what we'll do now is we'll get this chassis out of its case. I've just noticed there's some screw bolts in the side, and we'll have a proper look at those transformers. Right, so you can see there we've got a plywood baffle, and we've also got plywood sides as well there, you can see. And you can see that we've even got a tube chart there. So we've got 12x7, 6v6, and I'm not sure what that one is. We'll have a look on the tube itself, and that Celestion there, G815. So we've got some beefy transformers. Certainly the output transformer, that is that's quite big for a single-ended amp. For a 5-watt amp, that's a good 5k at 8 ohms. That's what we like to see, better than 4 ohms. And we have got 250 times 2 and 6.3 volts and 6.3 volts, so all good stuff. So there we go. That's a bit of a look inside this beast. Now we've got to see where we're going to mount this jack socket. I suppose the obvious one would be there, in that space where the grommet's coming through. And as that cable's already been removed for me due to Mr. Laycross, yes, so there we are. So we'll address this problem as well before we start, and then we'll get the tubes out and we'll drill a bigger hole there for a jack socket. So the rectifier tube is a 6Z4. So I've been looking around on this amplifier now, having got right inside it, got some more powerful glasses on so I can see, and there's a lot of borderline cold solder joints in here. So we can see this one, if you look, it's cold. This one, and there's not a deal of solder on that. They've been Mr. Laycross again on those. All of these have just been laid across. You can see it on sorry, there you can see, and on there they've all just been laid across. This needs sorting out, as we looked earlier in the video. We've got to somehow get that away from that resistor, so we're going to have to lie that across this cathode resistor here. And these crappy half-watt resistors, and the other problem with these boards, which somebody should have spotted in their infinite wisdom, that these turn on these rivets quite easily. As you can actually see if I push that, because these resistors are flimsy, because the leads on them are really thin. They've also used some cable to join that across, and instead of putting something thicker on there, they've kind of not even really thought about these moving around. Now I don't think they turn around and touch together. Maybe I don't think they would, but even so, it's not great. Makes the thing look generally untidy, and you can see on the orange drops there, the wire's much thicker there. And if we go to the one on the orange drop, you can see that one's pretty solid there. So I'm going to just address those dry solder joints. And it's the same old thing when I come into amplifiers and see this lay across thing. These should be through the holes on the, and you can see here we've got a terminal that's blank, that's not been used there, but they've not bothered to do that. And I look for the code solders, and then I'll solder those up, and then I'm kind of thinking I really ought to go in there and redo all those. And it's such a lot of work, by the time you've messed about and done all of that. And the thing is with this chassis as well, it's not the easiest thing to work inside. The way these chassis are very thin in design, and that's probably again why they've laid them across. It's it requires a little bit of care and attention and a bit of extra work to do that. And obviously these amplifiers are built on a budget, but this really does look like it's been thrown together by someone who's bought a kit and has never done one of these before. And there's a lot of things. So for instance, check out this resistor. That's just been put in. We've got a load of lead on the end of that one, you can see, but then on this one, on this side, it's really short. Look at these capacitors here. These are wobbling about. These really should have been flat to the board, or at least if they get them lower than they are, and if they couldn't get them flat, then some silicone on those, because they're just, as this amp moves about, they'll eventually break free. May take a number of years, but they will break free eventually. So generally just a poor design. And you can see we've got this coupling bypass capacitor there just pressed up against the chassis. Admittedly there's not a lot of room in there. So yes, and the thing is, to have put a proper Fender Champ turret board in this, it wouldn't have cost that much more money. I bet you're probably only talking £2 or £3 more to put one of those in, because these things aren't particularly cheap to buy. And you can see these drop-in resistors here, look, they're skew if not fitted in properly. It's not great. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around, I'm going to check all these solder joints. I'm afraid Mr. Laycross has had a bit of a victory with this one, because I am not going to go in and deal with every single solder joint on this amp. It's just going to take up too much time, and it only came in for a jack socket. so I'm just, but there, I mean, that one there is cold, so we're going, that one there, so we're going to address that one. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around, have a bit of a prise with a screwdriver to make sure none of them are going to come free, and as long as none of them do, then I think that's where we're going to draw the line on this one. I might put some hot glue on these 3 capacitors here, just to keep, I'll hold those a little firmer. But again, you know, just the way this has been done, it's, and the thing is that, you know, the parts in this amp all seem good. This amp sounds fabulous. So, you know, someone's gone to the trouble of choosing all the good parts, but then they employed Mr. Laycross to put it together. And as we know, Mr. Laycross is a bit of an idiot, and he keeps popping up every now and again. I'm going to have some t-shirts printed. Look out for Mr. Laycross. Pull there, they were laid across. I've done both of those, put them back in the eyelet, and it's so difficult. You see, the problem with this board, one, it's crappy. 2, all these wires should have been fitted onto this board before this board went in here. That's how I would have done this. All these terminals needed cleaning with a wire brush, or wire brush on the Dremel, just to shine them up and make sure the solder takes. And that's one of the reasons why the solder is struggling to get it to take on these. It's just a crappy board. And the thing is, like I say, we've got good quality transformers, we've got good quality switches and things, but I'm afraid this board is junk, and that's the biggest problem. And of course, now to work on this board, to even get the pliers in there to, you know, put the wire through and to, you know, J-hook it to the terminals, is really difficult to get in here. There's no room. All that should have been put on before this board went in. This board should have been built up, should have gone in, and then all you've got to do then is connect all the wires to the sockets and so on, and, you know, the tube sockets. But unfortunately now, this is a bit of a nightmare. And I keep looking at some of these, you know, I keep thinking, oh, that one's all right, and then I'm getting that thing again. It's what I call the Magnus Magnusson syndrome. For you in the States that don't know what that is, maybe some of you in the UK, it was a general knowledge game, and they had 30 seconds or so much time to answer these questions. It might have been a minute, 2 minutes, and then as it was halfway through a question, the bleeper would go, and he used to say, "I've started, so I'll finish." And that's exactly what it's like with this. Once I start it, I've got to finish it. And, you know, I'm fighting a losing battle in here, but I just hate walking away and leaving those wires looking like that. You know, and even the 2 I've done aren't fantastic, because you just can't get in to make a proper job of this now. It should have been done when it was out of the amplifier. But anyway, enough of me moaning. And again, you know, this amp is $339. You can buy these online, £339, something like that. Or if it was $334, can't remember. But anyway, which for a hand-wired amp is cheap when you consider this amp, you know, the quality of the transformers and the sound you're getting from this. But if you dig deep enough, there's always a price to pay. If something's cheap, there'll be, you know, you'll uncover something. And in the instance with this, it's a case of some fair quality parts that's just been thrown together. And I think what I'm going to do now is focus on this, because that's something I can't leave, because over time the heat going through this capacitor will eventually destroy it. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. Gooden, I'm sure you'll agree with me on that one. Please let me know, and also let me know your opinion on this amp. As I say, you'll all be surprised when you hear it. So that's something we need to address now. So I'm going to go away, and I think the best thing to do with this, and I think I might just have to change another, get another capacitor, and it might be a good idea anyway if that's had some excessive heat. The only thing we can really do is mount this over this 1.5k, and that'll be second stage cathode resistor on the 12AX7. That's about all we can do really. And the other thing with this amp, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a great reader of amplifier information, despite that I work on them. But this Duane Junior, so the idea of this is that this amplifier's been modded for, and I don't know whether that's the Duane Allman sound or what it is, but I see no mods in this amp, whoever it's been done for. I don't see any mods in this amplifier. I don't think Duane Allman, if it is Duane Allman, the Duane Junior, and I'm presuming that, I could be wrong, could be somebody else, but if it is Duane Allman, I don't think he'd be wanting to put his genius name to this board in here. But anyway, but I don't see anything on this amplifier that springs out that says mod. All I see here is a Fender Champ, because, and you know, you can almost do these in your head, can't you really? So, you know, if we look, we've got a 22 microfarad capacitor there. Well, that's 25, but usually, you know, try getting one of those. 1.5k resistor, cathode resistor there. We've got 68k, sorry, just go in there. We've got 68k there, look, on the for the first stage coming in on the grid. Couple of orange drops which are 22 nanofarad. We've got plate resistors 100k as normal. We've got the same bias setup here with a 470, and the same, I presume that's the same cathode resistor, which I think is 25 again. And then again, all this is the same. The 220k there, the 22k, the dropping, even the dropping resistors are the same. So the only difference is on this amp is the filtering's a little more, where we'd have, what would we have, 16, 8 and 8. I think we've got 22, 22, 22. Well, that can be said of most modern single-ended 5-watt amplifiers now, and to be fair, some have even got 47 on the first stage, and you know, and occasionally on the second stage, on the second nodes rather, first and second nodes, and yeah, that's a good idea. But I don't really see anything else, unless there's something modded on the tone stack in there, because I do see a couple of capacitors, and again, to my memory, I only seem to think there's one capacitor on the volume and tone layout on a Champ. Again, I may be wrong on that one. It is a while since I've worked on one. I ought to know. Perhaps we ought to check the schematic, but if it is, if there is mods on this amp, they're barely noticeable. So I'm going to sort that out now, and I'm just going to have to stop looking at those terminals, because if I don't, I'm just going to keep doing them one after the other. It's really beginning to irritate me to leave those. And you know, if I'll be honest with you now, if this was my amplifier, I would out that board and I would put a Fender Champ turret board in this, a proper one, and I would fix it in properly. And before I fixed it in, I would wire it all up properly, crown the tops of the turrets so it looked proper, and then in it would go, and that would be proper. Right, so I put a radial on there. I know I can hear everybody saying, but that's probably the best way to do it, because if I'd have put an axial on there, I've got to drag it across here, and it's going across that cathode resistor, and then, although I suppose it's pretty elementary what's under there, but anyway, I've got this thing about not covering other components if I can avoid it. So we've now got that on there, and that at least now has got some air around it. It's not near the hot resistor, and we can still see the other component underneath. But the other thing is that, you know, obviously I've run the amp up and just tested what voltage we're going across that, before I selected that 22 microfarad, and there's 16 volts. Well, that's 35 volts working. 100 volts, so the one they got across there, they didn't even need one that big really to go over there. You know, they could have found something much smaller. I actually don't have any more 22s, only this radial, so I've stuck that on anyway. And that's to me, that's the best way of keeping it away from the heat. Even if I put a smaller one down the side, you know, if I had an axial and I put it in between the 1.5k and the 470k bias resistor, it's still going to get hot. So I think that's, with that, it's the best way to go with it. And now, while I was looking at that, I actually came round here and see if we can get onto this socket, or sorry, this aluminium makes the camera flicker. Look at that. Let's just get something to point with there. Look at that mess. Mr. Laycross at his finest work. Dear, oh dear, oh dear, what a shame. And this is you know, again, a really nice amplifier, and a really brilliant idea to, you know, to build a clone, a good, you know, value clone. Because let's face it, you know, even for a clone kit, you know, you'd probably be into well over £400, and then you'd have to build it yourself. So the idea of this, I think, was a really good one. I'm afraid when it was put into practice, well, it all kind of fell apart, which is a bit sad really. And I don't like criticising things, because I try and see things for what they are, you know, and you do it, you know, some techs, they look at some rubbish, and they don't, you know, not every amp, you know, when you look back at a lot of the amplifiers that's been built over the years, most people can open the lid up and find things that, you know, that aren't quite right in them, or they've cut corners in manufacturing and things. It's a common thing. So, you know, I try and look at it. This is a kind of, you plug this in, you think, well, this sounds brilliant. You can kind of forgive some of it. You know, if you looked inside and you think, well, that turret board's not brilliant, if it's been wired up properly. But it's not been wired up properly. And so that's the sad part of it, I'm afraid. You know, we could live with a turret board that's perhaps not, you know, up to the par with the Fender ones. But putting up with that and the crappy wiring as well, that's probably, you know, if this thing were all wired up properly, we'd be looking at it and thinking, well, that's not bad for the money. You know, it sounds really good. It's not bad for the money. You'd look at it, you'd think it's not, you know, it's not top drawer, but it's not, you know, it's not £1,000, $1,000. That's just poor workmanship. So I think at that, I think I'm a bit deflated really, because I kind of opened this up and I was kind of buzzing a bit after listening to it. I was kind of buzzing a bit, but kind of a bit deflated now after seeing all that work. And I don't like leaving it, you know, I don't like putting the lid on and leaving it, but if I get into that lot, it's going to be some hours work to put that right, given the fact that really what I should do is take the board out and do it properly. But that's just a mountain of work. So this 6Z4 rectifier on this amp looks a bit of a small rectifier, although I wouldn't have thought we'd need too much to run this amp. I mean, again, this is another way where I look at this. If I was designing this, I would have just had solid state rectification and spent the money they saved on the tube and the socket and put a decent board in it. To me, that's a no-brainer. I don't get this rectifier craze thing that's going on. No centre tap on the filament winding. No centre tap, and no artificial centre tap either. I must admit I didn't really notice that much when I played through it, but that's quite noticeable. Right, well, I've just tacked on a virtual centre tap and that's made no difference whatsoever. Right, we've got this Boston Duane Junior back in its case. I tacked on a 22 microfarad onto the first stage just to double that first stage up, and it did make this amp quieter, and there's still a slight bit of noise there. And obviously Class A amps are a little more noisier than push-pulls, but so it is probably lacking a bit of filtering. I think also there's some problems with the grounding on this amp as well. It's not been done properly, but you can go on forever more. So let's have a listen. On its original speaker. Let's have a listen to it on the 4x12. Right, we're on the 4x12, and let's have a listen. Got a nice bassy tone now, and the bass is very distinct when you're playing these double lines. there we are. That's the Boston Blues. Well, sorry, that's the Boston Duane Junior. Nearly said Blues Junior then. Boston Duane Junior, a Fender Champ Clone. Great sounding amp, hand wired, not wired so good inside as we've seen. Could do with a much better turret board and a bit more care and attention in wiring this amp up. I've also got a feeling the grounding scheme's not particularly great on this amp either, as I've said. But for £339 you can buy these. I think it's Bax. You can buy them from, amongst other places. You know, if you're the sort of person that can put the, you know, build these amps, put them together, and you bought this cheap, you could put a decent turret board in it and wire it up, and you'd have a really spot on amplifier. But for the money it's okay, but as I say, there is some issues with this amp. Right, so that'll do it for this one, and I've mixed feelings about this one. I was kind of buzzing when I actually plugged it in, and then it got a bit deflated in the workshop. Probably had a bit too much of a moan about this one. But yeah, so thanks for watching, and you all take care, and I'll see you all in another video. Bye bye for now.